Homecoming was selected, and I really felt that it was Creator telling us that it was time for the residential school survivors to come home. And then the subtitle was Lighting the Home Fires, and then we had the teepee. And I think there's nothing more beautiful at Treaty Days when we set up the teepees, light the fires inside, and you see that glowing teepee in the communities. So for me, it's coming back not only to our communities, but coming back into themselves. And if we can be a part of that, then I'm hoping that we were able to do that.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out in the rain. I actually phoned my mother at 7:30 and said, "Is it still on?" We are here on the theme of a homecoming for the survivors of residential schools, and so it's an especially personal day for me as well, because both my parents are residential school survivors, and it has always been a very difficult journey to share at a personal level.
Being able to respect everybody's belief and where they come from is important. So when we have times like this and we can bring the two together and unite as one, it's all for the same goal. You know, I brought my dance group out here called the Walking Wolf Singers and Dancers. What we're going to do is we're going to open up and we're going to do what we call almost like a grand entry. But to me, that circle represents life. You know, and we talk about life both in the traditional aspect and also in the church. And when we talk about life, we talk about being in this world today. And when we're done on Mother Earth, just like that circle, life continues for us, but in another place. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be opening up with the dance. The first verse that I'm going to do when I do sing the song is going to acknowledge those ones that are in heaven, the spirit world right now. Whenever we have a gathering, we always acknowledge those ones that are no longer with us. There were so many different songs to sing, but I figured the song that I was going to share with you comes from the Red Shadow Singers. And I've been singing with them for almost 25 years at different ceremonies. And it's called the Ancestor Song. So we want to acknowledge those who aren't able to be with us because they're watching down and see all the good work that we are all doing here together.
I've been gifted with one special interview where I'm permitted to share part of the story. Suffice to say, the story hits me at my root level, for it was my uncle, an Anglican priest, who helped this person in the healing. When I first heard his name spoken, my heart hit my ankles. And when this person said he was the only one who cared, it came up to about my knees. But it was her story that has affected me and everyone I've told the story to. About an hour after her parents went on the trapline, a plane came down. And a person came out of the plane and picked her up and put her in the plane and immediately took off. She rolled to the back of the plane during takeoff and hit her head on the bulkhead. And all the way to Sioux Lookout, she cried over and over again, "Newickie way, Newickie way. I want to go home. Please take me home." And that's where this song comes from. Newickie way, Newickie way, Newickie way, Newickie way.
What we want to be able to do is we want to be able to honor you with a song. Like Dot was saying, and that's what I call her, she was saying that we want to be able to bring you back almost like a homecoming for you. And she asked that I'd be able to sing a song, an honor song for yous. And she didn't like the word survivors, and a lot of people don't. And I'm a little iffy about it myself. However, it was a very dramatic and traumatizing time in a lot of people's lives. And we know and we understand that. And today and this weekend, we're going to be facing some of those issues that occurred and talking about them. But what we want to do is every day when you wake up, whether you belong to the church or whether you belong to the traditional way of life, you always give thanks to that one person. And that one person is up there. In the traditional way of life, we say thank you, Creator, in English. And when you wake up, you say thank you, God, thank you, Jesus Christ, in the mornings when you belong to the church. But in reality, there's always that higher power looking down upon us. And today I want to honor you with the song which we say thank you. Thank you to the Creator just for having you here to be with us and acknowledging what you have went and gone through in that experience of residential school. So today we want to give thanks just for having this event with an honor song called what we call the Creator Song.
Well, I think this was the largest percentage of non-Indigenous people that I've seen at a sacred circle within the diocese. And I was delighted to see that. The more we can get, the sooner we can get people working on understanding what the issues are, what the concerns are, and what people can do to resolve some of the issues. A key issue for me is the lack of education. The education is important because the majority of non-Indigenous people don't know the stories. They don't know the history, because they don't know, they don't understand. And then that's nothing to do with me.
I want to begin by telling you what I think is a very significant and very important story. Not many people know about this story. It's something that happened in the late 1800s. Peter Trimble Rowe was an Anglican missionary. He had spent a couple of decades at the Garden River Reserve near Sault Ste. Marie, working with the Ojibwe people there. And Bishop Benjamin Whipple of Minnesota heard about him, heard that he was a strong person and that he knew how to handle dogs and dog sleds. And so when the position of Bishop of Alaska came open, he suggested that this man, Peter Trimble Rowe, who was from Toronto originally, but had spent all that time in Garden River, that he would be a good first bishop for the Diocese of Alaska. His first contact with the Gwich'in, who lived for the most part north of the Yukon, all the way up to the Arctic coast, he went in there and he found that these people were still living their traditional way. They were following the caribou, living in skin huts, living a nomadic life, sometimes called permaculture life, where they would spend different times of the year in different places, harvesting different foods. And what he found was that all of them each family had the Anglican Book of Common Prayer in their language and a Bible. And that each family, as far as he could tell, all of them, roughly about 4,000 people, as they were following the caribou around, that they were reading morning and evening prayer daily in their skin huts as families, thousands of them. He was stunned. In many ways, you could say that they were the most Anglican people in the world. I find this very inspirational in a number of ways, and also it teaches us an awful lot about how the church works in indigenous communities, how the church works among the people. what works and what doesn't work. They were family-based. They were not so much anchored to a building or a place. They were anchored in prayer to each other. And this, I think, is not only the past, looking at the past, but also looking at the future. And that's what I would like to talk to you about today. The past and the future, and how God moves in the midst of us and through us along the way. Now, I would like to suggest that in each one of our lives, there is a healing stream. It flows through our hearts. God placed it there. It's been there from the very beginning. And that in all of us, in our lives together, the way that those healing streams intersect are very, very important, but also a part of the story that we're trying to tell today. And so today, I believe that we have a great challenge before us, that we have a lot of obstacles before us. But I believe if you just think about it for a moment, it's such a big vision. It's such a beautiful vision. It's such a powerful vision that God has set before us. And so I hope and pray that you will respond to that vision once again, and that we will move from this place to a place where we make a better life, that in the gospel that we trust and believe in, that we'll find a new way of being, indigenous and in Christian at the same time, a new way to live, that we can take the hope of this gathering and carry it to the nations. Amen. Amen.
You know, through this time where we've, been faced, our families, we've all been through it. We've been, as Bishop Mark shared his own personal story in that challenge, and many of us have had those challenges. And it is because of, what has happened. It is because of colonization and those policies and laws and how they've impacted our families. And yet we stand here together today, and we are able to come together, and it is truly the grace of God. I have to tell you that it is what moves us all forward as a people. I thank you, Bishop, for inspiring us all, and for your prayers always. We are always aware of them, and it has taken care of so many people, so thank you.
The question we're going to give you is, what does reconciliation mean to me?
I think reconciliation for me is having a new relationship with another person, having a new relationship with God, having a new relationship with the church, and for me that is reconciliation.
It's very hard for reconciliation to happen outside of relationships. And I think about my growing up in, I'm speaking in the context of reconciliation, particularly with Indigenous brothers and sisters. In my context of growing up, I'm not sure I ever saw an Indigenous person in my farming community in southwestern Manitoba. So going to Kenora and living in Kenora and meeting people and hearing stories and being so shocked to know that this person that people I'd come to love, especially I got to know people in northern Manitoba who didn't own land, didn't own a house that was their own, and I never knew that. And so I think it's only when we become to hear the stories and love one another that reconciliation will happen. So I'm grateful for God taking me to those places where I met others.
I was just thinking of our time in Chesapeake, northern Quebec area. We were there for 3 months, and one of the things that really struck me at that time was you didn't need to do a lot of talking. Part of being with people and getting to know people was just being. And to be able to just sit and be together and spend time together and just sit quietly was a very important thing. And I think looking at reconciliation, I think sometimes our culture wants to talk things out too much maybe, and kind of, like you said, we're in a hurry to resolve things. And I think one of the things I learned from that experience is sometimes you just need to just be with each other.
When I first started thinking about reconciliation, I thought, what a silly word. It means getting back together, and I don't think we ever were together in the first place, so how do we get back together? And I spent some time just being annoyed about that. And then I thought, okay, there's another way you use the word reconcile, and it's when you reconcile your checkbook to your bank statement, and you make sure they're telling the same story. I think that the story I learned in grade 5 and grade 8 and grade 11 is not the story that the First Nations people of this land lived. And I think that would be reconciliation if we could all come to a common understanding of what the story of Canada is.
I think you have to realize that even though I was here in a leadership role today, I'm part of the journey too. So like I'm on my journey, and I've been at all the diocesan sacred circles, but and I said to someone today, of all of them, for me this was the best. And I would say that because I felt there was no separation kind of between all of the participants and the various aspects. Some of the circles in the previous, understandable, when you're doing the Indigenous ceremonies, the Indigenous people are comfortable, and the non-Indigenous are okay, but they kind of are on the edge, you know, they don't feel quite so included. And then it flips. When we move to the typical more kind of European style worship, some of the Indigenous people kind of sit back a little bit and look a little more shy. I didn't sense that today at all.
Thank you. I was born in Bloodvein in a log house, but because of the government, my birth certificate says I was born in Pine Falls Hospital. That was a number one. The first sentence of my life that is not true. And I grew up that way. I was 14 when I left my home community to go to a residential school in Winnipeg. There was no communication. There was no phone to talk to my mom or my dad. I was very lonely. The second year I was there, my brother Louis came. But I was not allowed to sit with my brother at the table in the cafeteria. The girls sat on one side and the boys sat on the other side. I stayed in a dorm with about 15 other girls. So how do you sum up your life that was so confusing? I learned to fear God. I learned that because I was an Anishinaabe, that I probably wouldn't make it to heaven. That was my biggest fear, that I will never be good enough. It wasn't until 1992, my late youngest sister introduced me to a sweat lodge. I sat by that sweat lodge, literally shaking. My whole body was shaking, and she asked me, "What's wrong?" I said, I'm scared. Of what? That I will hurt the church. That I will hurt Mom and Dad. And she said, no, it's okay. Come with me. And when I went inside that sweat lodge, and as the elder spoke, my nerves started to calm down. I began to relax in there. And I began to find myself. And I began to hear the true voice of our spirit, the Creator. And when that was over, I came out. And I said, I'm a born-again Anishinaabe.
I'll just introduce myself. I'm Lisa James. I'm the middle daughter of Sylvia and Nelson James. I'll just start off to tell you a little bit about our dad. You probably know our father was Nelson James. He was from Rosa River. He came from a large family. He was a twin. Both him and his twin attended residential school in Portage la Prairie. And our father went there at a young age when he was 4. And he was there for approximately about 14 years. So he was there quite a long time. He did see his family there, but he didn't have contact with them. He suffered a traumatic experience while he was at school. My dad, he went there healthy. He had 2 legs. And he came out, he only had 1. So he suffered an accident there. And, he made it through. So our father was a great dad. Everybody had their problems, but he did the best for us as kids. And coming from a large family on his side, my mother, she comes from a large family on their side in the north. So we got to see, with my mom's stability from her family, she did not attend residential school. And she was brought up with 15 children, just like my dad, but on his side, he was sent to the school. But when our mom and dad got together, it's like our dad realized what a family was really about, because he did a lot of things that he didn't know about. So my mom brought her values into their relationship, and he got accepted into her family, and then we pass on our things to our children.
Growing up with my dad, my sister mentioned alcoholism and stuff, and I know it's only supposed to be 5 minutes, but I want to mention one little story that taught me a lot in my life. Was one of my aunties was always, one of my dad's sisters, was always, every time we saw her, she was always intoxicated. She had lost her kids all her life. And my dad was starting to get ill. This was only about 3 years ago, I guess, with our Helen. And for myself, I thought, I learned along the way that, you see a lot of people on the streets that have addictions and problems. They're living on the streets. She was always like that when we seen her, but I always made sure that I hugged her and gave her a big smile, and, she was always happy to see us. Shortly after she got her residential school payment, she became really ill. And like I said, we never really got to know any of our aunties and uncles on that side. Just in passing, we'd always acknowledge them when we seen them because they were always happy to see us. But she got very ill very fast after she got her payment. And my dad wouldn't go see her in the hospital. It was my mother, myself, my sister, and some cousins that would go in. And one of the things that I don't know why, but I just often thought, because she lived her life that way, that she didn't have any kind of a faith or anything, I often thought that, I didn't know why or anything, but she eventually got really ill. We spent some time with her. Near the end, she stopped drinking. She wasn't able to do that. And sitting with her on her deathbed and stuff, I realized at that point that everybody has spirituality in some form or another. And no matter how hurt she was when she was in residential school, she still kept that piece of her in her. And we saw that on her deathbed when she had such an easy time and an easy peace of going to meet her Creator and to meet God, that to me, it was such a mind-blowing experience, because to me, it really resolved the fact that, you know, all these people that were hurt so badly, they've always carried a spirit within them. Whether or not that's been, and right now it's the rekindling of that spirit. We talk about bringing them home. It's about that, bringing that back.
My Aboriginal name is Megazikwe, Eagle Woman. And what I wanted to share in this is partly an understanding of the process of reconciliation. Both my parents went to the same residential school at the very same time. And my father had a very painful negative experience, and my mother had a very positive experience. It was a very interesting experience for me then, because whenever my dad would start saying something about what happened in the residential school that was negative, my mother would say, yes, but remember Miss So-and-so, she was always doing this for us. Or remember, Father, he made sure every one of us got a toy for Christmas. And I learned that there's always going to be different parts to the story. The same place experienced in very different ways by two very different people. I dedicate this process reflection to them, because they were the ones who really gave me the beginning that I had in our little village. But my experience of actually working with Aboriginal people started at about the age of 15, when my uncle was beaten by his friends after a dance, and they were drinking like usual. They got into a fight, and he was left unconscious in the ditch for the night. Nobody knew he was there. And he was found the next day, and he was brought to the Sudbury General Hospital. And we used to go, because I had to wait for my brother from 3:10 until 5:30. I used to go to the hospital and visit him. And I was half hoping for a miracle, and I was actually praying to Kateri Tekakwitha that he would be healed. And I was also doubting that he would regain his health, because he had severe brain damage. And in that moment between faith and doubt, I asked myself a critical question that relates to part of what we were speaking of here. I said, why is it that we as Native people do this to each other? We beat each other, and we kill each other, and we kill ourselves. Why? And I realized at that very moment, alcohol is not our problem. That's the symptom. Our real problem is that we don't know who we are as Native people, and we don't have an awareness of our own goodness and dignity and beauty. And in that moment, I recognized that God was calling me, Eva Solomon, to do something about that with our people. So in the steps of healing and reconciliation, the first step is awareness. We realize we've been lied to. And the next step is anger. And somebody mentioned anger. Anger is a very important part of our healing, because we are angry, not just with those who lied to us, but we're angry with ourselves for believing those lies. And the next step is crying out. Step number 3 is crying out. And that's what the whole truth and reconciliation process is about. It's our crying out to have someone hear us until we believe we've been heard. We had a marvelous ceremony not too long ago where 4 Aboriginal men adopted Archbishop Weisgerber as their brother. And that was one of the most powerful examples of that reconciliation, because when they told their story to him, he said, "The Pope needs to hear you." So we arranged to have him go and see the Pope. And so what did they do? They were able to talk to the highest authority that they could imagine in our church. Then they could believe that they were heard, because James Weisgerber heard them and gave them the opportunity to tell their story. And then they could be reconciled. Then they could turn around and adopt him as their brother. The fourth step is really that forgiveness of ourselves. And the way we forgive ourselves is by helping to reverse that lie, to recreate our own truth, or to find a new truth for ourselves, a healing narrative. And when we can find that in ourselves, then we can let go of the abuse that others did to us, because we're no longer imprisoned by what they think of us, because we know at the core of our being who we are as Aboriginal people.
I believe that many people wanted to go through the process of truth and reconciliation and get back to the way they were. There is a sense that I get from a lot of speaking to a lot of people across Canada, that they're hoping that we can get back to the way things were. And I think it's important to understand that we'll never get back to the way things were, and thanks be to God. Because what's going to happen is a new identity is going to emerge, a more real and more important identity. The wounds of what we have been, in a negative sense, they have to become redeemed. They have to become different. And the hurts that people have experienced have to be seen in a different way. The hurts that people who have been hurt have given back to other people have to be seen another way. We have to find a new identity, and that's something that we're working on.
I know the church had very good intentions when they brought us the gospel, but things went wrong along the way. And that was, I don't think, never their intention of doing that. And I'm asked a question too. I was in residential school, and why would you ever become a priest in the church that hurt you so much? And it wasn't the church. It was the people that were in the church that was looking after the church. They were the ones that did all the hurt. And I can honestly say we're forgiving people. No matter how much you hurt us, we'll still forgive you. And if we did wrong to you, we're asking for that forgiveness too, from you. And if we can do that and sit together like we're doing here, things are going to only get better.
Is it the purple jacket?
I have been asked today to speak, and I have chosen to speak about love. Within my understanding of the meaning of love, love is talked about and written about to the point that most of us do not have a clear understanding of the meaning of love. Love is not a gift to broadcast the future with wise words and valuable advice. Love is not the ability to perform heroic deeds and provide outstanding leadership. Love is not the expensive gifts that we may give to our family friends, and others. However, there are certain qualities which are necessary for love to exist. Love is patient. Patience is the ability to accept and endure pain and suffering without complaining. Love knows how to stand up to challenges of life and accept them with a calm spirit. Love suffers long and is kind. With love, a person does not become bitter and plan revenge. Love is kind, understanding, and forgiving. Love returns good for evil. Love does not envy or become jealous. When good things happen to other person, love is happy for that person. It does not try to tear them down or say bad things about them. Love does not boast or brag or try to show that one is superior or better than others. Love does not seek attention or show off. Love is not conceited or selfish. Love is humble and does not judge. Love avoids evil and is happy with the truth.
We're going to be braiding the colors together because each of the colors represents very many things. The medicine wheel is used as a teaching tool. It has a variety of teachings, many teachings that you can gain from the medicine wheel, and each tribe of people have different ways of interpreting it, but it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. So what we do when we braid is that we connect all those things together, and we also connect all the races, and it's about unity and unifying ourselves as humanity.
God of unconditional love, take away all hatred and prejudice and whatever else may hinder us from godly union and friendship, that as there is but one body and one spirit, one hope of our calling, we may be all of one heart and of one soul, united in one holy bond of peace, and may with one mind and one mouth glorify you.
As we were preparing to start the Eucharist, the survivors had been invited to light a light, a symbol of their homecoming, and to float that in a kind of a common bowl, a pool. And I was, as you saw, quite overwhelmed, quite unexpectedly. And in part, it comes from some research and growing appreciation for the Eucharist that I've been involved in, which is really an offering of ourselves. And it just suddenly struck me that, boy, when you think of the journey that these survivors have been on, and they are offering themselves in the midst of us, in front of all of us, to God, to us in this worship. And it just suddenly, like the dots kind of lined up all of a sudden, and really struck me in a very, very profound way.
On this table represents both the life of the crucified and risen Lord and the lives of all of those gathered here as we offer them in praise and thanksgiving to God. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Christ given to you.
The cup of salvation filled for you. Amen.
Okay, we take the feast plate in honor of our grandmothers and grandfathers that have passed on before us. And we also remember those among us that are that do not have enough food to feed themselves. So we remember those people who are hungry. We remember our ancestors that went on before us. And we are going to bless this food, and after the food is blessed, normally we would put it somewhere in the forest under a tree or bury it.
I really appreciate the volunteers who turned out. Very reliable, very easygoing, and willing to help out in any way. Some have done it for the first time. My 2 grandchildren were in there and they actually enjoyed it. And I welcome the muscle power we had for taking the chairs, for taking everything apart and getting it ready for returning. But I enjoyed working with the volunteers. They made it easier because they were willing to assist in every which way. Some of them even looked after the elders. They served refreshments.
Well, I think we've seen our first steps today, and I think we took them, you know, and it's like now the baby's walking, and I think we actually got to see the baby, and we have ceremonies where there's a walking out ceremony, and I believe today was our walking out ceremony. I was talking to the bishop and I said, I really would like to know, what was it like for the non-Indigenous parishioners to sit in a circle, sit outside, worship outside, eat bannock and tea because we did it at the Jamboree, and I wanted to know what it was their experience. So then I didn't really have a chance to ask people, so I looked around and I thought, you know what, they look comfortable.